Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being present for this event. Thank you to those who are able to join us virtually via YouTube. Come on, you're okay. Come on through. This is going to be casual. We don't have a script. Yeah, yep. We're off scripts all day. After Sunday morning, we're off script. So as you get a chance, find seats, etc. My name is Doug Hagler. I am the pastor here at First Presbyterian Church. So I see some people I recognize and some people I don't. So welcome to all of you. This event we are calling Prison Ministry 101. We are hoping to begin some prison ministry in this congregation. We are hoping to find partners we can work with among those of you who are here or organizations you might represent. And we are beginners in this. This congregation has never had a prison ministry before, to my knowledge, in our 175 years of existence as a congregation. So we're all starting from 101 level. And that is the purpose for this event, to bring people together. We have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom in the room with us in the area of prisons, how to support people in prison, how to keep people out of prison, how to help them when they're released. And so we will be delving in to the wisdom and knowledge of a number of distinguished guests today. And there will also be time for you to ask questions that you have once they've had a chance to talk about the work that they do and introduce themselves. As we begin, does everyone have these introductions? Hopefully. If not, good. So I don't see a purpose to reading them because we all have them here. We can read them for ourselves. So I'm just going to let people identify themselves so that you know who on the paper corresponds to whom in the room. So Termaine Hicks. Just kind of wave. Cool. Welcome. Then we have Ginny Slichter. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Chris Jimenez. And then Dr. Thomas Haney. Excellent. Dr. Haney, you can go up front if you'd like to. It's up to you. You can stay there. Either way. So those are some of our distinguished guests. We have a couple others. Is there anyone you want to introduce? Pastor Gates is also here, so we'll talk to him as well. And then there might be people in the room who have experience. We're going to try, we already have 5 guests, so we're going to try to focus on them. And again, this is for learning about the basics of prison ministry so that we can move forward and find a way that we can help and plug into some of the amazing work that these people are doing. So as we get started, I'm going to ask one question from each of our 4 people up front, giving them a chance to introduce themselves in the way they'd like to. And then we'll open things up for question and answer. And if I look out and I see blank faces and hear crickets, then I have other questions I can ask them to prompt things along. And we will not go longer than 2 hours, because I feel like 2 hours is when I really see people's attention drop off. Otherwise, we will go until we feel done and ready to talk about next steps. Does that work for everyone, I hope? Good. Awesome. All right, we're going to start with Termaine. You can answer whatever question you want to answer, like a politician. But the question I'm going to ask is, what would you like for us to understand about your experience in prison?
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, first and foremost, for those who don't know, I'm recently exonerated. I served nearly 20 years of a wrongful conviction, 19 plus to be exact. In short, police corruption. I was shot 3 times in my back, trying to help someone, being a good Samaritan, and realizing that they made a mistake. They made me out to be that zealot, and planted the gun on me. And 20 years later, here I am. My prison experience is it's not the same as everyone that goes through prison, guilty or innocent. Each individual case is different. Mine's is just different and unique in of itself. For one, I was just happy that I survived that night in 2001, November 27th. So I did, and people often ask me, how did you do the time? Well, I did it one day at a time, 6,893 days. Believing in God, knowing that one day I was coming back home. So it allowed me to free up my mental space and just to stay focused and hopeful and encouraged that one day I will be vindicated. And that day came December 16th, 2021. Being incarcerated is difficult, guilty or innocent. It's hard on the individual, if the man is or woman is of a reasonable mind, they begin to sit and think and reflect and look back on what it was that led them to prison and hopefully try to, shape and struct that into something much better for when they do get out in the near future. But being innocent adds a different level to that, man. It was difficult. Most days I didn't know how I was smiling, but I was smiling. And maybe large in parts because I was alive another day, But you do it one day at a time and you just stay focused. What gave me hope while I was in jail, as I mentioned, was just my belief in God, not necessarily in man, not necessarily in the court system, not in no one, not even in myself. It was just hope and belief in God that something greater than me would get me through this unimaginable nightmare that I was living daily. The connections that I had on the outside played the part. My family, when I went to jail, when I was incarcerated, I was 25 going on 26 years old, and had a 4-year-old son. The day that I left the penitentiary, my grandson was 4 years old, So naturally, I lost out on a lot watching my son grow. But God, he has a way of making things play themselves out. So what I missed in my son, I'm seeing and reliving through my grandson. And it's a wonderful feeling. It is great. It is awesome, to say the least. What were a couple of the most helpful things people were able to do for you while you were in prison and after I got out? My family support is key. Probably you only have to be incarcerated to understand and realize the importance of having a familiar relationship. You need that in this world. More so when you are incarcerated, and even more so when you are wrongfully incarcerated. So family support is key. My family, my siblings, my mother, and extended family, they were there with me and for me from day one because first and foremost, they know me. I was convicted. I was accused of raping a woman that I was trying to help. They know I'm not a rapist. So they understood and knew that. So I just, with them in my corner, I felt, almost invincible, to say the least, because not everybody have their family. Not everybody have, a brother, older brother or younger brother, sisters to lean on, man, when days and nights get difficult, man, and when you feel as though that you can't do it on your own. Everybody doesn't have that. And I was fortunate to have that. But also friendships. Friendships is key, man. Being incarcerated, you meet a lot of people, man. I see some of the great men that I've met while I was incarcerated strolling down, man. These guys encouraged me, man. They kept me focused. They kept me strong. They kept me willing to fight each day. And even on the outside, women like Ginny, with EFM and what, her enthusiasm and her uniqueness and her loving kindness coming up into the prison, man. It was awesome. And, it was another day. Mondays were Ginny's days, The chaplaincy department, Chaplain Gates, one of the fine chaplains from the prison where I was at for a number of years, is here. And I had the privilege to actually be a chaplain aide, I worked in the chaplain department. And I was in there for about 12 years, man, and it was just my sanctuary. It was the place where I was able to just go and hang out, to get away from the madness of the block, the institution. It was always quiet in the chapel. I was at Greatest for the bulk of my time, so there was no air conditioning in the summer. Chaplaincy department had AC, so I was definitely down there every day in the summer. I mean, so, you know, it was little things like that. And, you know, just forging these relationships and keeping them going as much as I possibly could help weather the storm. And even after you know, I was released, the New York Innocence Project is the organization that helped secure my release. And it took them 12 years to get me out. This wasn't no, okay, we're going to take your case and get you back in court and you'll be home tomorrow. No, it took 12 years for them to go back and forth with the courts. Again, my faith was not in the criminal justice system. It was not in man at all. And unfortunately, it took the New York Innocence Project 8 years to actually accept my case. So my first 8 years, I was going back and forth to court on my own, you know. Kurt read over some of my briefs that I wrote on my own, you know. So by me coming home and being fully exonerated the day that I left prison opened up a lot of doors for me. Made my transition that much easier, made my transition that much smoother. With the Innocence Project, my attorneys, the friends and relationships that I forged while I was on the inside, being reunited with my family on the outside, had nothing but love and support, you know, through it all. And this, the 16th of this month would be 16 months that I've been home, that I've been free, fully exonerated and vindicated. And I'm humble for it. I am not bitter from my experience. I do not hate the police. I do not despise any type of, you know, law enforcement at all. No, that is not me. That is not me. And now, certain individuals that were involved with what happened to me, I have a few choice words, but collectively and as a whole, nah, not at all. So that'll be it for now. You know, feel free to ask me any questions. I have a lot of answers. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask a question of Ginny Slichter. Same rules. You can answer the question you want to answer. But the question I'm going to ask is, I'm going to invite you to tell us about education for ministry and to let us know how you and Termaine met.
Oh, that's a story. I'm so excited to be here to tell you about this. Education for Ministry is a 4-year course out of the University of the South at Sewanee. It is a college course. It was founded in 1975, and over 88,000 students have graduated from the program. It's non-denominational. It comes out of an Episcopal seminary, but it's non-denominational, sometimes with a little bit of an Anglican slant, but not too much. The class is run by a mentor. Well, not really run by a mentor. There's a mentor, and I've been blessed to be able to do that for almost 17 years at Graterford and now at Phoenix. The mentor's role is to walk beside the people during the class. We have some of the answers, but that's not what we're there for. I have some of the material over here that we use if you're interested in. We use textbooks. Like I say, it's a college course. First year is Old Testament, second year is New Testament, third year is documents of the Christian church, fourth year is theologians and what now. But it's not just for Christians. It's not for new Christians, I have to say that, right?
Absolutely.
It's not for new Christians. But we've had one of my favorite students who was a Muslim, and he brought so much to the class. The class challenges people. But what it does is makes all of us able to articulate what we believe. There's the second year book, no, the first year book, the PAL book. People can't stand it because it really challenges what you're thinking. But once you get through that, it's really pretty amazing. I came to Graterford in 2007. I had followed Dennis Warner, who had been the mentor for 25 years, who had been my mentor when I took the course. He was an Episcopal priest and a dear friend for over 40 years. And he would tell us about the class at Graterford. And you know what, it's kind of like, I'm embarrassed to say, it's like out of sight, out of mind. And I just couldn't really conceive of, he was talking about these men and how much he loved them, and how bright they are and how dedicated they are. And I thought, oh, that's nice, you know, and then I went on about my life. Well, in 2007, Dennis developed brain cancer, and his biggest sadness in life was his inability to continue this class. So one day I was visiting him about several weeks before he died, and I'm not quite sure why, but it must have been the Holy Spirit prompted me to say, do you think I could mentor this group? And Dennis started to cry. And I realized that that was something that I think I was being called to. So let me tell you, those of you who are interested in starting prison ministry, nothing is easy. There are hoops and hoops and hoops and hurdles and more than you can ever manage. And it's worth every single minute of it. I made the appointment to go in and talk to the group, and that took weeks to do. But I walked in and I was so frightened. I'm sitting there waiting for the guard to come, because at this point it was Graterford, and you had to walk through the entire prison within the population. And I was really scared. I'd never been in a prison before. Prison ministry wasn't even on my radar. So we're walking down, and as we're walking, I'm praying. I'm praying for the men that I'm going to meet. I'm praying for Dennis, who is dying. And I prayed for me, that I would be able to do this, that I would not be prejudiced, that I would not be frightened, that it was something that I think God was calling me to do. So I walked into this room, this ugly, ugly. How ugly was that room? Andre, how ugly was that room? Ugly. So I walked into the room, the guard left me outside. He stayed outside, and I walked in. And with that, 12 men stood up and greeted me, handshakes and smiles, and just such a welcome that it took me aback. And I talked to them, and I said, you know, I told them about Dennis, because they loved him so dearly. And I said, I know I'm not a priest to begin with. I'm a woman. And I'm a white woman. At this point, the entire class were African Americans. And with that, Herb, who was a fourth-year student, stood up and said, Miss Ginny, everybody needs a mama. So for the first 4 years, that group of men in that first 4 years, I was Mama Ginny. EFM is a vehicle of it's not a typical Bible study, and we tell the guys that all the time. It's not a Bible study. We do study the Bible, but we do a thing called Theological Reflection, which is the heart of the program. And what we do is we take an incident that has happened, that's over and done with, and we look at it theologically. And what does that have to do with our life in Christ? EFM, that group, that place, as ugly as it was a little piece of the kingdom. I walked in and I could feel it. There's a sense of trust that grows, that I know a lot of the men have told me they don't find it anywhere else in the prison, that it's a place of non-judgment, it's a safe space, and that it's a place that they want to be. You were saying my day was EFM, and they didn't miss. My outside group would miss because they had to go to a bake sale or something. My inside group, they were always there, short of having a visit, which is really important, or being sick, which doesn't happen very often. They were there every single week. It is, I think, life-changing. It was life-changing for me as a student. It's life-changing for me as a mentor. And I've heard it from the men that it's life-changing for them. It's really challenging to be in a prison ministry. As I said before, there is nothing easy. Rules change and they forget to tell you about it. Or the rules change and make no sense. I haven't been able to be, it breaks my heart, I haven't been able to be in the prison for the last 2 years. As a volunteer, I'm unable to contact the men because they don't want you to form a relationship, I think, which is hard to understand in the context of EFM because that's what it is. It's all about relationships. But the love is still there, and I know that they're praying for me, and they know that I'm praying for them. If you want to do a prison ministry, It will change your life in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. The thing to do is to pray first, last, and always. That ministry is so wrapped in prayer, not by just the men in the group and myself, but by so many other people who have been involved in EFM. My parish, Christ Church, Pottstown, has supported it for all the 17 years that I've done it. I think one of the biggest challenges on getting people from the outside to connect with the program, we have a graduation every year, and I always bring people in because my passion is to let people know that these guys are not what they did, but whose they are, and they're beloved men of Christ. The biggest challenge, I think, in getting people involved in prison ministry is fear. What you see on television, what you hear on the news, is not the case with all the men. Would you want to be known for the worst thing you ever did for the rest of your life? And sometimes it's a split-second decision that has caused the incarceration. And it's not who they are, it's what they did. So in building a prison ministry, pray. Patience, nothing's ever easy. It may take much longer than you think. One thing that is extremely important is commitment. If you say you're going to do this, be there. I mean, the guys know that every Monday morning at 7:30, I'm going to be at that front door. They know it, you know? And then when I'm not, it's like, there has to be a really good reason. I think in the 17 years, I've missed maybe 4 times, because that's where I want to be. That's where my heart is. So don't give up. Don't give up, and pray, 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 pray. So I encourage you to do it. There's nothing like it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Dr. Chris Jimenez, Bishop Jimenez, and same rules as before. But the question that I invite you to answer, if you wish, is to tell us about healing communities, and especially how you connect with congregations.
So, good afternoon, everybody. And as I said, I'm Chris Jimenez. I am currently serving as the Executive Director of Healing Communities PA, which is an independent branch of Healing Communities USA. We started a little over 10 years ago. Well, now, actually, it's been longer than that, about 14 years. As an outreach originally of the Annie Casey Foundation, and our goal at that time was really teaching congregations, all communities of faith across not just the Christian church, but everyone, on how to do effective reentry support for people that were coming home. One of the things that we found out, and particularly in the Christian church, and this isn't really designed to beat anybody up, but it was just true that at that time, and still a lot of times, you got everybody rushing up to the prison to preach. I know, I'm formerly incarcerated, and I will tell you, I heard a whole lot of bad sermons while I was in prison, because everybody was running up to the prison to preach. In fact, in Philadelphia, where I currently live, there is a 3-year waiting list to get to the state road prisons. But when it came time for someone to transition out and come home, those same congregations that were running up to the prison to preach didn't want folks when they came home. You know, I tell you, I've had guys tell me stories, you know, that when they came home and they went up to the minute they found that minister that was an essential part of bringing them to Christ, and they would, you know, go up to them after the service and say, hey, I met you at Greatest, I met you at Phoenix, I met you at Dallas, I met you wherever, and I'm just wanting to connect with you. And their response would be, you might want to go down to the church down the street and don't tell them that you're formerly incarcerated. Or somehow it would come out in the congregation and, you know, every little old lady's hiding her pocketbook, and, you know, and that is because of the stigma that happens. And what we started to find out was that this was a great shame for a lot of people. You know, but however, the biggest answer to folks coming home to help them stay home. one of the two things that we found out in all the research that we did when we were launching Healing Communities was that the top two issues weren't jobs and housing. That's what everybody thinks they are. That the top two issues for reducing recidivism were how you think and who you hang with. Well, who better than the faith community? Because hopefully we give you a whole new group of people to hang with. And I have never met, as a pastor, I have never met a better cognitive behavioral therapy book than the King James Bible. Because we give you a new way to think. So if we've got the answer, then why is it that we're so... Our literature, Hebrews 13 tells us to remember those who are in prison like you were with them. Jesus commanded us in Matthew 25 to visit to visit folks in prison, to be there for them, to help them when they're transitioning out. And he said that it was so important of how we built our vertical, that he actually translated our vertical relationship with God, whether or not we actually experienced salvation. In other words, whether or not we were getting into the kingdom of heaven by our vertical relationship with everybody else. And by whether or not we were welcoming and inclusive, or whether or not we were rejecting folk. The problem with that is, the problem with that is when you see that practical application in the church. And I know some of it is we just don't know how. We don't know what to do. We don't have the skills. We don't know. So what Healing Communities does is we have an entire training program. We come in with congregations, we introduce it sometimes at the Sunday morning service or in a Bible study or at and then we go through an actual training program. Where you learn the basics of mass incarceration. You learn what communities can do to support returning citizens. Some really easy stuff we don't even think about. Stuff that doesn't cost us anything at all. Stuff like one of the biggest ways to support someone while they're incarcerated is mail. All of us who are in here who are incarcerated will tell you what it is like during mail call if you don't get one. It's one of the toughest times of day. And of course you can't express how you feel that you didn't get it. But when you get one, man, you see the look on some folks' faces. And one of the things we do know is that it's not only just about how it feels, but it's actually people who get mail regularly, their recidivism rate is automatically reduced by 20%. Just because because they're corresponding with somebody regularly. And so all we really got to do is reaching out to the chaplain's offices, because chaplain's offices kind of do know who gets mail, who doesn't, who's being supportive, who's not. And so we help congregations set up basically pen pal ministries to sit and everybody who's worried about safety, guess what? Mail goes to the church and from the church. So that everybody's addresses are protected if that's what you're concerned about. But it also gives an opportunity for that team that's writing these letters to come together, to share the concerns that they're receiving back and forth in these letters, to actually pray. Because listen, if church folk can't do nothing else, we can pray, right? We're pretty good at that. So, to actually pray over those concerns, finding small ways to meet them, and that's just one way. Another one is visit support. Families have to travel a very long way to actually go and visit. Most prisons, particularly the female prison population, there's only 2 women's facilities in the entire state of Pennsylvania. Most women in prison are mothers. And so what happens is that they really lose touch with their children the whole time. Because there's nobody's, how far away Muncie is from Philly? Most of the people in Muncie are from Philly. And there's no public transportation that goes there. So just driving a family up, it costs you some gas and some time. But it means so much. Even just supporting in county prisons. In Philly and State Road, we have 5 facilities on State Road that are different county prisons. So folks are usually there short term. They're either awaiting sentencing, which means that they're there because they can't afford bail, basically. They're there because they're too poor to pay bail. So they're awaiting their process, or maybe they're sentenced to a short term, or they're waiting to be transferred upstate if they've been convicted and have that much time. So, but the only bus that goes to State Road is a bus called the 84. And for family members coming in to visit to have to get off that bus, go in, be searched, usually talked to by guards, and this has only been in fact, actually they haven't reinstated in-person visits yet. So a lot of folks haven't had visits in 2 years, but as it is opening up, to walk through that door, to be talked to in ways that most family members are not used to being talked to, because unfortunately a lot of the COs aren't very nice. And to have to go through that whole process, not only is it dehumanizing for the incarcerated citizen, but for their families it's also dehumanizing. To have to walk out and wait for the bus where everybody on the bus knows why you're coming out, and to experience that shame and humiliation that is very real, when they could have came out, got in your car. No, you were sitting there just with a book and, and waiting for them to come out, to be able to process that. No, because visits regularly are another thing. People who get visits regularly reduce their recidivism rate by about 25%, just from receiving visits regularly. But yet, the first thing that is usually one of the biggest barriers is regular visits. And I will tell you, yes, everybody's been on the video visits for the last 2 years. The infrastructure in most of the county prisons were not put in place to accommodate them, so people who are in county jails are not getting them, maybe getting a visit once a month if they're lucky. And then that's another way of supporting, because, at least in Philadelphia where we live, a lot of the homes don't have, and didn't for a good portion of the pandemic have good internet. Kids everybody be on the internet at 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock when the kids are in school and everybody's internet shut down. Well, guess what? Most churches have business internet. How we function. We have good high-speed internet. So what can we do? We can, instead of that family trying to struggle to get on their Comcast, that's going in and out, hey, why don't you come to the church? Sit at the computer. We'll open up. We're already paying for the internet, so how much is that really costing us? But we'll provide that level of support. And those little things make huge differences in the lives of individuals who are incarcerated. I would tell you, the amount of support that I got when I first came home is the reason I am here today. The amount of support that, because Paul and I have been married 38 years. So I did my incarceration time during the time we were already married. And for her, for the support that she got from our congregation and the support that she got, that I received when I came home, I would not be here with you today. I would probably still be in and out of jail. So this is how much it means to be able to have that. And it's the same, and I'll shut it down with this. It is the same kind of support that we're talking about that we already intrinsically do when someone's sick, when someone's think about the layers of support we put in. Somebody in a congregation has a family member that passes away. Think about that level of support. We just, here we are, we're coming with the food, we're walking with the family, we're even helping make sure they don't get taken advantage of by our church. We have a whole ministry that is about making sure the families don't get taken advantage of by funeral directors. So, just walking through that, we build that level of support. And it's the same thing. The same thing that we do when someone's sick in the hospital, the way that we show up, the way that we walk alongside, the way that, somebody's scared of going in for a medical procedure because maybe they're going to chemo for the first time. What happens? Folks from the church usually go with them. So we say the same thing to our congregations if they're taking a returning citizen to instead of send them to that resource, take them, go with them, do a warm handoff. Costs you a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of gas. But to that individual coming home, it's huge. I'll say this and I'll shut up, but there are 45,000 barriers. Our society has set up 45,000 barriers to a person with a felony conviction to be able to find a life We have barriers to housing, to education, and to jobs. And the first thing we tell people when they're coming home is, you need a job, you need a place to live, and maybe you want to go back to school. And then they go and they try that, and they're told, you can't come here. My experience with that, I graduated from Temple with my doctorate in 2000. I was supposed to be graduate student of the year. That's basically the same thing as undergrad valedictorian. I was offered a teaching position. And then they found out about my criminal record. Now, I hadn't lied on it when I applied. But they found out about my criminal record. And I was told, as hard as I had worked, for my side D, they told me that for me to stand up there as graduate student of the year would be an embarrassment to the school. And that's what folks are dealing with. Every level of trying to succeed, every level of trying to work your way back to life, there are barriers there. And that's the other thing churches can do. We have a whole thing that we teach about advocacy, where we help congregations learn how to advocate on these issues so that returning citizens can have a better life, can come home to an actual second chance and have a better life.
Once again, our next distinguished guest, Dr. Thomas Haney. Same rules. Answer the question you want to answer, but the question I will ask is, I invite you to introduce us to Books Through Bars, and if you have a moment, tell us one success and one challenge that you've faced.
Well, Pastor, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much on behalf of Books Through Bars in inviting us here today. I drew the short straw, so I hope I do well. Real quick, and I know this is written down in the paper because I can go on for 2 hours now just listening and picking up on some of the things that these good folks behind me all said. What I'm going to say to most of that is ditto. Ditto. There's not an untruth in there. I do have a doctorate in divinity. Pastor, I'm not going to be stealing any of your weddings, though. It's a degree of convenience. Money, I didn't have it. What I did was my study, my profession was on counseling those that were prone to violent, repetitive, compulsive behaviors. I have almost 40 years doing this. I have seen people come into churches, congregations, and not just Christian congregations. I have men and women tell me that they've been shunned because they found out they were incarcerated, or more importantly, because they found out about their crime. People wouldn't let their children alone in the same room with people who have been incarcerated, and it didn't matter what their crime was. They just didn't trust them in the same room. Women wouldn't stay in the same room, and it didn't matter what their crime was. They wouldn't leave their pocketbooks laying around, because if you were there for a theft, you're always going to be a thief. You're always going to be a criminal. What I have to say here, you are going to be very pleased if you open up a prison ministry. One of the reasons I've been doing mine for so long, there are going to be people who want to change. It may not be the first year, it may not be the second year. They may have to sit incarcerated for 2, 3, 4 years until they finally realize, I've got to change my life. And when you find those people, you're going to walk out of that room and you're going to be so proud for them. Oh, excuse me, I didn't expect this. You're going to be so proud of them. The problem is, we don't hear about the people that do well when they come out of prison. We only hear about the people that commit another crime, that go back to prison. Even though he didn't commit a crime, he's been in jail for a hell of a long time. Oh, excuse me, can I say that, Pastor? He's been in jail for a really long time. Just being incarcerated, as far as I'm concerned, just being incarcerated is an assault on your mind. If you weren't mentally ill when you went in, you're mentally ill when you come out. This man I give a lot of kudos to. And from the way he addressed some of the other men that came in, you guys also, because it takes a lot of strength to come out after spending so many years and do what this man has been doing. Books Through Bars has been around for 30 years. And since I don't read this often enough to remember, I'm going to read a little something about Books Through Bars. We believe that society as a social and economic inequalities leads to a cycle of crime and incarceration. Still today yet, education is one of the top reasons people commit crime and go to jail. Poverty has to be right up there with it also. So what Books Through Bars does is that we send free books, and it's listed on the paper that was handed out, to the Mid-Atlantic states. We used to do the entire country, but it just got to be too much. Money-wise, it just got to be too much. Books Through Bars, almost every single day, gets a stack of letters like this. Now, what's in this stack is not just the states that we serve, the Mid-Atlantic states. We get letters from across the country. We even get letters from around the world. We've recently one from China, I forget, somewhere in China, Great Britain, stuff like that. Now, we don't service all these because it's just too much. And fortunately, there are other organizations like ours around the country and in other countries who do the same thing. And they all get letters. So a recent one we just got, they're not all asking for books. So to answer the question, what are some of our successes? Well, first of all, one of our big successes right now is that we're still open. We're still sending books during COVID. We've had to shut down a lot of our programs, but our core volunteers are still there, and we're getting the books in. But this is a letter. How do we know about our successes? It's hard for us because once a person leaves an institution, for the most part, we don't hear from them again. They go out, they go on with their lives, they do things. They don't want to advertise they want to be in prison, so we don't know how well these folks are doing. We do know there's a lot out there doing okay. But this letter we just got, I just want to send to you a letter of thanks. I can't thank you enough for the work you all do. Thanks for the books. They're perfect. God bless. May peace be with you. And it's signed. This is how we know we're succeeding. Because we've been doing this now. It's our 31st year. We've been doing this for, we've been getting letters like this. Sometimes we get Christmas cards. Sometimes we get Easter cards. We get Valentine's Day cards. Handwritten cards just to say thank you. This is how we know we're doing the right thing. Since COVID started, and I have a couple figures here from August 20 to August 21. If somebody's good with math, figure how many tons this is. 203,872 ounces. When we send everything in, we got to weigh it because of postage. So if somebody can figure out how many tons it is, I think one of my colleagues said in that time we sent somewhere around 6 tons of books. That's just during COVID. And we were behind because we didn't have all the help. And because of COVID, a lot of people just stopped sending to us because they figured we were closed down. In that time, individual packages were somewhere around 1,000 packages. It cost us $116,355 and change to do this. All of our books are free. For the majority of the time, our books are donated, so we ask that they be in reasonably good condition. One of the things that you're going to find out running a prison ministry, you start this up, and you touched on it, things change. It will drive you crazy. The Department of Corrections for the state of Pennsylvania all fall under the same envelope, the same tent. And yet, every single prison has its own restrictions, and that's why what we have on the back of these envelopes, their own restrictions that we have to look at for each individual prison. They don't have all the same restrictions. You can talk to one person one day, you can talk to another person the next day. They have the same job, and they'll give you two different answers. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to get angry. You're going to cry. You're going to lose some people. But just walking out of there, getting the greeting that you do when you walk into a room, and these folks want to shake your hand, want to give you a hug. They don't get that in the rest of the prison. They're not getting that from their families anymore. You may be the only person that they can get these kind words and gestures from. That's one of the big things. That's one of the things we at Books Through Bars keep doing this. When we get letters like this. This letter here, because I don't know how long this gentleman's been down. By the way, when you start your prison ministry and you listen to their numbers, especially here for the state, if you come across anybody with an A number, they've been down for a very long time. That's a person doing life. That's a person that's got that huge sentence. May not have been a life sentence, but got so many years tacked on that they're going to die there.
Rounded off, it's 6.37 tons.
Thank you very much. So my colleague was right about that. That is just since COVID started. We hear from a lot of different people. We can get letters, we can get just simple letters like this one here. We can get letters that just ask for a book or a couple of books. And since our books are all donated, we never know what books we have in our library at any given moment. They come in, they go out. Some folks ask for very specific books, very specific authors. We don't know if we're going to have those, but we try to send them the best that we can, the closest that they're asking for. And we keep our fingers crossed that it helps. Not just general reading material, but we send educational material in. I have another little quote here I want to read you real quickly. I can't read, I can't write, I feel like a failure to myself and my family. This is one of the things that your prison ministry is going to want to help change. Making people feel good about themselves, making them feel that they are a person, that they are worthwhile, that they can come out and do something good for themselves. I lost track of my time. Sorry, I said this downstairs. You get me going? I just... But that's the whole thing. There are just too many people who can't get out of that. They've been mistreated. They've been abused since children. They come inside. They're told they're worthless. They can't do anything. They're dumb. These are the people you want to reach when you go inside. So I think I covered everything, and if I don't stop now, I'm going to keep on going. Again, thank you very much for your time, your patience. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for the lunch, too. I was wondering where I was going to get my lunch from today.
All right. Excellent. Thank you to all four of you. Now we're going to change gears a little bit, but I wanted, something struck me just now sitting there that I've been thinking about. And I like to say things outright so that they're clear. I know that there are some people here who are formerly incarcerated. So I wanted to tell you that you are welcome here. I just preached a sermon like 3 hours ago that said that anybody is welcome to come in to join us for worship in this community. I cannot promise you will not experience any stigma. I don't have any control over that. And we're beginners, like I said. However, you are welcome to come back even when it isn't a special event talking about prison, okay? Just want to make sure that was clear so no one's guessing. Second, we're going to change gears here and we're going to move to question and answer. So anyone who comes here with a question, as I said, we have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge in this room right now that we're not going to have next week. So while we have them, if you have questions about prison ministry, we have experts. And so now is the time. So you can either ask your question and I can repeat it for the mic, so people who are watching on YouTube can also hear what the questions are. Or you can come up to the mic and ask it directly. This mic is for anybody who wants to talk into it. So the floor is open. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? And as I said, if there's crickets, I have more questions I can ask. Yes?
On YouTube, they've already asked for contact information for Healing Community.
Okay.
I provided it in the chat.
Excellent. So I think we've been trying to, or I asked Maggie, and Kristen's working, trying to cut and paste contact info into the chat, because people on YouTube didn't see the intro pages that we all got. And so we're trying to share that information. So we're working on it. So let them know we're working on it. If nothing else, we can share it to our Facebook page and they can see it there, or upload it as a comment after the video is done. So we'll do that and we'll try to do it now. Other questions? Yes?
My question is for Termaine. I'm just so happy for you. God bless your heart. Did you ever think about writing a book?
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
I would.
I am a writer. Being incarcerated, right? How long do I have to answer this question?
What's that?
How long do I have to answer? Oh, my man. And for y'all guys, Champ and Kurt, Freddie, he's a good guy. Pastor Doug is good. Endorsement goes a long way, man. I'm telling you. But to your question, sister, I actually have a memoir in writing, but I just want to back up a little bit. I'm a playwright, by skill. Been doing a lot of writing for almost over 20 years now. I have a lot of written works, plays, stage plays. I'm currently working on a biopic with Netflix right now. I'm writing a script with another writer. Disney and Broadway are looking at the plays that I've written while I was incarcerated. Some of these plays I've actually produced inside the penitentiary, act graded for it, just real quick, writing was a form of escapism for me. It helped me to create an alternate environment from the one that I was trapped in. It was I escaped. It was a whole process. Writing it was the fun part. Finding guys to do the roles, fun but tricky part. setting up, scheduling for rehearsing, a couple of months, fun, tricky part. And then I was at the mercy of the institution because they had no problem just transferring guys that I was rehearsing with 2 months. So I had to reconstruct some of the plays on the spot or just X that guy completely out of the lineup. So it was tricky. But fast forward, being home, one of the things that I created while I was incarcerated was these series of educational scripts that I call STEPUP. And it was geared to teaching these kids how to police themselves, dealing with gun violence and dealing with bullying. And my experience over the 20 years that I was incarcerated prepared me.
Yeah, 20 years of your life, you have to have such a journey to help people. How about 2 books?
2 memoirs. Hey. So you're giving me some ideas now, so I'm just saying, I appreciate it.
Did you have one more to add to that? Did you have the same attorneys that when in the beginning as you did through your journey, or was it separate?
Separate attorneys.
Wasn't one firm?
Nah. In the beginning, I had private counsels. In short, 20 police officers testified against me. And a lot of the misconceptions at trial in the beginning stages of a wrongful convictions, 9 times out of 10, your attorneys were ineffective. That wasn't the case with my case. I had some brilliant attorneys. I had 2 private counsel. It was just that the Commonwealth, the district attorney's offices, and the police had an agenda. 20 cops testified against me in 2001. If 20 cops was to testify against me today, I wouldn't have got convicted. It was just the world that we was in at that time. As a matter of fact, my attorneys were so upset at the conviction, they did my direct appeal for free. We talking tens of thousands of dollars. Post-conviction, I did that on my own. In the federal stages, I did that on my own. I did it all on my own all the way up until 2011 when the Innocence Project decided to finally take my case, and then they came in with their own attorneys and experts, and this is why I'm standing here before you today.
My niece works for a big law firm that does criminal, part of it's criminal and part of it's defense, so 2 separate.
Mm-hmm.
But she passed the bar about 3 years ago, but it's just interesting. She can't tell me the stories, but just how it works, it's something else.
It's frightening. Thank you for your question.
Well, God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, other questions that you have? Well, yes, go ahead.
I just have one comment. I'll just try to talk real loud.
Okay.
I've been involved with prison ministry for 15 years, and maybe the third from the left, as we're looking, can address this. But my comment is, what started me was my pastor, where I go to church. The fact that my pastor, since day one, has supported it so well, has been tremendous with my recruiting of different people with the ministry, and also, you may not know it yet, but you'll have a need to raise money. And
You don't say.
From the pulpit, if the pastor supports it, you would be absolutely amazed at how much support that you can get from your congregation. Maybe you could address that, Doctor?
Thank you, and I hear you.
Yeah, that's a huge part of this. As pastors, we set the tone. And we do as leaders, and it's the same. I think it's pretty much the same across the board, whether we're talking about a temple, a masjid, whatever. The leader sets the tone. So if the leader is supportive of what that prison ministry is trying to do, it is going to be much more effective. It's going to be much easier. It's sort of like back in the day when a lot of congregations did HIV testing. The more effective way to get everybody in the congregation with testing was if the pastor got up and got tested as well. So it's the same thing. Bottom line is that we set the tone. We probably get listened to, depending on which pastor you talk to. Sometimes we get listened to a lot. Sometimes we don't get listened to as much. But the reality is that we do. We set the tone, and so that will have a lot to do with the success of it. So the fact that, for First President, Phoenixville, the fact that your pastor opened up this and hosting this event today and is seeking will go a long way to making sure that, that it's supported by the congregation.
What are these things? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Hicks, how valuable do you think former prisoners being involved in prison ministry and doing things to show their transformation, how valuable is that to our church communities, as you can see?
Thank you for your question, Freddie. It's invaluable. You know, you can't put a cost on that, man. You're talking about men who were once incarcerated, who are now rehabilitated and are returning citizens. You know, and prison ministry, and to me, cannot exist without that. It's a coexistence there. You know, we need men like yourself, like myself, who are representations of rehabilitation, you know, at the highest level, because that recidivism rate is high. We know it's 70-80%. It's going right back. But when you, so when men in the inside see men that was once there with them and see that they are doing well, it puts something inside them, say, well, damn, you know, Freddie's doing good, I can do that. Champ's doing all right. Champ had a life sentence. Freddie had a life sentence. Kurt had a life sentence. You know, I'm talking to guys that had life sentences here, man. And if these men was to go back inside of the penitentiary, prison ministry, realistically, how impactful would that be, man, for the 5,000 plus men serving life just inside of Pennsylvania alone? So it's invaluable, bruh. It's invaluable. Thank you.
Same question to Sister Jenny.
So same question to Ginny, and then
How important is it, Jenny, for you to see the manifestation of your work, of people coming out?
I don't even think there's words enough to explain what it's like. I've been blessed to continue a relationship with the guys once they get out. And no barriers. I don't have to be careful if I hug somebody. I don't have to be careful what I say. I can call them, I can write them, and I can't do any of that when they're incarcerated. So it is, and I think what you have to understand is once you do ministry over a period of time, you do become family. You know, when I walk into that room, I'm with my brothers in Christ. You know, there's no barriers. Emotionally, there's physical barriers. But seeing them, I mean, when Champ walked in today, I literally was in tears. You know, yeah, it's fair. It's wonderful.
Chris, go ahead.
Just, you know, I think the only thing that we have to, the only barriers are usually created by the system themselves. You know, because we do have, you know, there are some facilities in some counties and some in ways that folks are sentenced that will prevent them from going back and serving and serving, volunteering in prisons. You know, and it's not fair. I mean, it is totally, because we're wasting a valuable resource. You know, for those of us who have made successful I've been home almost 26 years. You know, so for those of us who have made successful transition back to, back to like that's what folks on the inside need. Folks need to know it's hope. You know, and I don't think the story gets told enough. You know, one of the things Pennsylvania has sentenced more people to life without parole than any other state in the country. And I'm not talking about just per capita, just numbers. We currently have a little over 5,000 people serving life without parole. Recently, when the Supreme Court made the decision that if you were sentenced to life as someone under 18, you had to be resentenced, they made that retroactive, that it was unconstitutional to sentence a youth. And I don't like using the word juvenile because we never use juvenile in a positive context. Nobody ever introduces their kid to somebody as this is my juvenile. So we always use juvenile in a horrible context. But people that were sentenced as young people to prison, we've had over 400 people released in the last few years due to the Supreme Court decision. And their recidivism rate has been exactly 1%. We have only had 2 individuals out of all of those who've been released who have returned back to prison. One of them was for a technical violation of probation, and another one was for something else dumb. You know, neither one of them went back to jail for violent crime, you know, for a new violent. We just know that's, but I know from working with folks who, with guys who have come home, we have incredible people doing, work in advocacy, in reentry support, in restorative justice, and they are the literal geniuses of what we do. So I think it's incredibly important that we have more formerly incarcerated people in the in the system. I'm currently on the State Reentry Council, which I serve as chair of Restorative Justice. There are 3 of us that are committee chair people, 3 of us that are formerly incarcerated, and they sometimes take what we say with a grain of salt. But the reality is that us at the table, even if we have to create our own table sometimes, but us at the table makes a difference. There's something that in the advocacy world that started out with disability advocacy that says, nothing about us without us. And so there's no way that you're going to have a movement to end mass incarceration if the folks who are directly impacted by that movement aren't leading it.
Doug, can I say one more thing? Of course. If you're thinking of starting, it sounds like you're really thinking of starting prison ministry. I think what you'll have to be aware, and I was absolutely shocked. I was speaking at a parish out in Yardley, Pennsylvania. We'd been at a wonderful church service, the whole 9 yards. We walked out and this woman said to me, "Why are you wasting your time?" And I couldn't even speak. I didn't even know what to say. And I finally said, "Well, that's how I'm living out my baptismal covenant, to seek and serve Christ in all people." So there may be people in this congregation that don't think that it's something you should be doing, don't think they're worth it, whatever reason, but it's so worth it. They are so worth it. So just be aware that might.
Thank you, and I hear you. Let's go 1 and 2. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much for what you said. So I used to work in a children's home called the Banner. Oh. And there was, God gave me a verse, very early on. It was 2 Corinthians 4:18. And it says, "Fix not your eyes on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is eternal, but what is seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal." And you might look at these men, or look at young boys, look at children, and just see the pain, the behavior, their conviction, but God sees the unseen. And I've been in 21 different prisons in the state of Pennsylvania and in northern Virginia. And the first person that came to visit my son in the hospital was one of the men who initially came to prison. I was pictures of him holding my babies and a cigar in his mouth, and I went to him. But you know what? It's the unseen. And that's what we're here for, right? You're here for that. You're here for that unseen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, real quick. Termaine. This here, it says you have founded a company, STEPUP?
Organization.
Okay, is that in Pennsylvania? Is like an office or a company? How does that work?
All right, STEPUP is the name of it, and it's a nonprofit organization. It's an acronym which stands for Selfless Thinking Expresses Potential that Uplifts People. And what it is an organization that is geared to teach children, young adults, responsible adults, critical thinking and conflict resolution. It's brand new, obviously. I've only been home not even 16 months, right? But it's an idea and concept that I actually came up with in 2008, sitting in a prison cell under a wrongful conviction. One of the many things that I did to create an alternate environment from the one I was sitting in. So, as of right now, we've produced our first short film. It's called STEPUP to help curb gun violence. It's on our website. It was on YouTube, but it's now on the website. Just that in short, it is actual, we have an office, and it is grown, and it's expanding. I have some cards over there somewhere. If not, I have some on me as well. But yes, it's an actual organization.
So do you travel with that? Like you go to different states, or is it Pennsylvania?
Well, now, The home base is Pennsylvania. I've been inside, and I'm focusing on Philadelphia right now. We've been inside of 6 elementary schools in Philadelphia doing presentations. End of the month, I'm going out to Portland. I'm going out to Arizona Wednesday for STEPUP to talk to various high schools and even police departments out in Portland and out in Arizona as well, down in Maryland. It's in a couple of different states. Okay.
Is there a website, STEPUP?
STEPUP, the number 4, youth.org. It's STEPUP4youth.org.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hi, this is for Chris. That's informational wise for healing communities. Did you talk more about the training that it doesn't cost anything to do?
Oh, my wife's my best marketing person. Yeah. So, but no, actually the training does not cost anything. We're fully funded. We have several sources that fund us to be able to do it for congregations. So yes, and we are able to do it both virtually and in person. Actually virtual has been beautiful because it means that we can spend less on travel and all, and more on actually delivering the training. But yes, it's free. It's about roughly about 4 hours. We're also in the process of putting together an advanced advocacy training where people who've taken the initial model training who really want to learn about the skills of advocacy, and running campaigns and working with existing campaigns, that's going to be probably a one-day training. But the initial one right now it's about 4 hours. It's a great breakdown in what mass incarceration really looks like, not only nationally but here in PA. What are things congregations can do to support reentry, to support folks while they're incarcerated, when they're coming home, when their families. We even talk about supporting victims as well, because a lot of times you will find, particularly in parish ministries, where you may have both sides of the same incident in the same congregation. And so as a leader, how do you effectively minister to both sides without look like you're choosing sides? So that we talk about that as well, along with also, restorative justice and practices. And then we spend a good time talking about advocacy as well. So that's an important part of our, I hate to say this, but faith community has an incredible amount of political power that it doesn't realize it has. We vote more than anybody else. All it needs to be is election time, and everybody's coming to every church to have a campaign event, wants to have a candidate for them. But we do have the ability to step up and say, we don't get involved in candidate politics for obvious reasons, but we can hold anybody accountable, and say, listen, this is what we want to see. This is the change that we want in our communities, not only to make them, to make them safer, but also to make sure that people have a chance. If you've been caught up in it, because it's so easy to get in the system, a lot harder to get out. But when you finally are out, that you can have the kind of life that everybody else should have. We shouldn't be having second-class citizens. I shouldn't be worried about 26 years later what my, when I apply for a job, I've got to worry about a conviction that's 26 years old. But that's what's still happening. And we should be doing something about those barriers. And the faith community is emboldened enough to do that. Particularly, and I'll just call the elephant out in the room, particularly white suburban congregations. As long as this is an issue that African Americans and Latinos are just the ones making the most noise about, it will probably stay the way it is. When lawmakers start seeing that it is, people who they don't see are affected by this as much, actually stepping up. But here's the thing. Urban incarceration is going down. Rural incarceration, suburban incarceration is going up. So this is an issue that doesn't just affect black and brown populations anymore. This is an issue that is affecting, poor white people. The opioid epidemic, while we've talked about it, is really, feeding mass incarceration. Domestic violence is one of the things that's feeding the women's population that has increased by over 700% since 1980. We had less than 1,000 women in prison in the state of Pennsylvania in 1980. We now have several thousand women in prison. No, so those are the things that we really need to be talking about, and that's, you know, that isn't even the faith community. Faith community used to lead social justice movements. You know, so this is one now where we say, okay, it's time for us to stop being so quiet and actually start saying, this is what we want to see.
Go ahead. You come forward or stand where you are, either way. Cool.
Ginny, it was important that you warn future ministries about the woman who approached you talking about wasting your time. I think it's equally important that you mention how your congregation responded when some of your guys showed up at your church.
That's easy. So I guess it was the week after you got out, right? It was the week after you got out, right? You came to Christ Church.
Shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I went down, and Charlie and I, my husband and I went down to pick Champ up in Philadelphia and brought him to Christ Church because our parish has been supporting this ministry for as long as I've been there, excuse me, by writing cards and letters and, you know, prayer and everything. So I invited, well, no, Champ wanted to come, he invited himself, and I was thrilled to take care of that. And he was just greeted with love and acceptance, and we all went out to lunch afterwards, and the conversations were rich, and it was just, you felt supported, I think. Right, Champ?
Yes.
Yeah, supported and loved and known.
I want them to know that there will be naysayers in your congregation who will not be naysayers when the process comes to them. Once you enter it and they see what happened,
Yeah.
they see us.
Yeah. When you can put a name and a face to the person, not what you hear on the news, not what you see in the movies, but when you see the flesh and blood person, as I said before, it's not what you did, it's who you are and whose you are. And these men are beloved men of Christ, and they need to be treated that way, and we need to support them as their siblings in Christ. But don't be surprised if there is some, like Champ says, if there are some naysayers, because there's always somebody that thinks, oh, they're criminals, they deserve, you know, they did bad things, they need to stay incarcerated, and that's not the case.
Yes?
I'll just make one comment. I agree 100% with you, but we're always going to have that percentage that are naysayers. However, I've had some experiences which I felt very understanding about, in that in two people specifically within my parish, they had experienced within their own family which affected them in a very, very negative way. So they actually had to go through healing themselves. So I think you don't always just judge someone who's a naysayer because of what they said, because they could have many, many issues and problems themselves.
Oh, absolutely. No, they have to be known and recognized, but just be aware that there are those people.
They're
Sure. I saw a hand back here.
You know, I was listening and I was very inspired. I sit in a cloud of witnesses of men who have been victimly wrong, accused, and is free. And also, I just want to say that I've been in the University of Adversity for a very long time as well. And hearing the stories and hearing what you had to say inspired me as well. But you know, what about the men who are convicted and is accused of a crime and is guilty? is trying to get their life back in order. And I've done this University of Adversity for 26 years. And what I've heard today is what I've been challenged with about my past 40 years ago of trying to, even at the age of 72 years old, trying to get senior citizen housing. Mm-hmm. And, but my past has been followed. It's what you sow, you shall reap, so to speak. And so therefore, and I have to say, to apologize to every female in here of my conviction that I've been now out for 16 years, a decade and a half. I have been educated, I have 2 degrees, and plus I've been pressing on to the mark of the high calling. So therefore, there are men that are struggling, trying to put their lives back together. I have mentors. I have a mentor here, Mr. Paul Wilman, a mentor here, Mr. Dan, and also many other men, influential men, as far as mentors, with Wilson Good, the mayor of Philadelphia. But it's still hard to get your be restored back as a citizen, returned citizen. Could anyone answer?
Is anyone want to speak to that?
So you got have a wrongly convicted guy come and speak about convicted returning citizens. Man, look, right? Before I was labeled as wrongly convicted, I was convicted. You understand what I'm saying? I was a convicted man in the penitentiary for a crime in the eyes of the courts, in the eyes of the Department of Correction, in the eyes of society, right? I was a convicted man. And each individual that's incarcerated is different and unique, right? And even though I stood as convicted as the next man standing next to me for whatever crime he committed, it was incumbent upon me to prepare myself for when I go home. So it's incumbent upon them to prepare themselves, because it's all it is a label. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Society is going to address you and label you as it sees fit, but at the end of the day, it's only a label. And where one door closed, we know that God opens up, you know, that job that you stood in line for all day isn't the only job, man. It's several hundred thousands, if not millions more. So it's a mindset, it's a determination. It's it falls back to what you really want to do and how do you really want to get it, man. Like, I see guys, convicted guys, my friends, they get discouraged at one shut door. Some get discouraged at the 10th shut door. Some never get discouraged. It's the individual, man. Everybody ain't going to accept you. So what? It's life, man. What you got to do is tie up your boots every day, man, because no one is different. I'm no different from you. I'm no different from Chris. Chris, how you doing too, man? It's been so long. How you doing, man? It's my guy right there. I'm no different from Kurt, man. I mean, we all put on our pants. I'm no different from Pastor Doug, man. You put your pants on one leg at a time? Hey, man. I'm saying. So, so what they close that door, man? So what they refuse to accept you, man? Go, keep moving. Somebody gonna open the door for you. If not a door, it's gonna be a window. If not the front door or the window, it'll be the back door. You just gotta keep going, man. You gotta be encouraged, man. It's a way of thinking. It's a renewed way of thinking. Ain't that what Christ taught? Apostle Paul? It's a renewed way of thinking. So that's all I'm gonna have to say today. Thank you.
Just real quick, there have been some things that have happened. Recently, the governor signed some new legislation that now every state licensed position, which used to be closed to returning citizens, Now, if it's a position that requires a state license, you can apply for the license like anybody else. There are some case by case, depending, obviously there are certain classes of, they're not going to give a daycare license to someone who necessarily has a sex offense, particularly a sex offense involving a child. But the vast majority of them are now open to every returning citizen. So that's one of the ways that we've done some changing, and we're actually working with employers right now on a regular basis to try and make sure that, and really through faith communities as well, because most of the time, most faith communities have employers in their congregation that we can say to them, look, returning citizens is actually good investment. I know your bonding insurance might say otherwise, but hiring returning citizens are a good investment. So we can do that. We're also looking at models where we create entrepreneurship opportunities for returning citizens. Because listen, when's the last time you walked into the store and asked the owner whether or not they were formerly incarcerated? We don't do that. I can't be a city employee, but I have $450,000 worth of contracts with the city of Philadelphia through the firm that my wife and I set up outside of Healing Communities. They've never asked me about about that, because they do business with the business and they don't ask that kind of stuff. They don't ask that kind of stuff. So, so there are ways to go about it. But what we're also saying is that there's still a lot more work to do. We need, for instance, Philadelphia, we're still advocating for that ban in the box to actually have some real teeth to it. To not just be, we don't ask it in the first interview. We want this ended. We want to see to us go back to where we were prior to the Patriot Act, where the job application said, have you been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years? Now it says, have you ever? But there was a time prior to the Patriot, that was the Patriot Act that did that. That opened up lifetime, background checks to any private organization. Prior to the Patriot Act, you couldn't do that. A private organization could only go back 7 years. So many times, that was one of the easiest things for returning citizens was employment, because if you'd been down more than 7 years, you could actually look at that application and say, from day one, nope, haven't been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years, because I just did 8. But now that it says, have you ever, is where we're running into the problem. And it didn't even solve the problem, because none of them 19 hijackers had a criminal record in the United States. So that solution didn't do anything but hurt us. So now it's about going back and changing some of in the same way that we're changing mandatory minimums, in the same way that we're looking at sentencing reform. That's one of the things that has to change, is to be able so that employers can't hold this against you for the rest of your life. And that we can go back to, because we do know, while it might not be the top issue, listen, working for a living wage, whether it's for yourself or somebody else, working for a living wage is one of the very things that keeps people from going back and making some of those same mistakes. There's no reason why we have folks that there should be a question why we talk about what the recidivism rate is, what it is. Because if I tell you can't work, you can't find a place to live, and you can't go back to school because of your conviction, well, it's really hard for the parole officer to turn around and say, you got to have a job, when nobody wants to hire you. So we've got to make some of those changes, and some of that we are seeing in Pennsylvania right now. Here's the other big one, right? How many people know in Pennsylvania, as soon as you come out of jail, you can vote day one? This is a state where there's 100%. Listen, the only time you lose your voting rights in the state of Pennsylvania is while you're serving incarcerated time for a felony. If you get released a work release, you can vote that day. But how many returning citizens don't know that? There's how many folks do, you get all these people, it's all them illegal people that put somebody else in office. No, we weren't illegal. We have the right to vote in Pennsylvania. So exercise it, use it, organize around it, and tell folks, no, this is what we want. There's over 300,000 returning citizens in the state of Pennsylvania that we know about. It's probably much more than that. Imagine if how much that could change the outcome of an election, because we all showed up and said, no, you want our vote? You're going to make some changes.
Pastor, to your congregation. And that is, and Termaine, thank you for this event, man, and giving us the opportunity to say that for each of us that are here, that have been formerly incarcerated, I want to say, and if y'all don't mind me doing that with y'all have, you know, we believe that God levels the playing field for anybody coming out of prison. That knows God, that trusts God, and leans on God. These lives have been transformed, literally. We don't believe we wear a neon sign saying what we was convicted about. We don't feed into what we were convicted about. But we want people to see us as new creations. We want to be able to contribute to our community just like Termaine has. And we've done that. I have brothers here right now that have been involved in prison ministry for over 20-something years. The plight that we want to sell to prison ministry and the real value of it is that y'all are the ones that will give us a chance. Y'all are the ones that will ultimately say, we're going to meet you, we're going to invite you to our table. We're not going to just say we care about you. We're not just going to say, well, oh yeah, we'll be glad to go in prison and do some Bible study, because I'm going to tell you something. You got people in prison that know more about the Bible than you will ever do. They can teach you some things. And they can get into debates with you that leave your head spinning. That's not the issue. The issue is what Christ said. I was in prison. You came to visit me. I was hungry. You fed me. Those are the things that we aspire for. So all these guys that are sitting here today, we don't really care what you call us, ex-offenders, ex-criminals, returned citizens. Our job is to demonstrate the manifestation of God's goodness. And anybody here that has ever volunteered to do anything for anybody, you need to applaud yourself, because you're the ones that instill hope and faithfulness that we can get beyond the point wherever we was at the time. So we thank y'all.
I'm set, bro.
I wanted to simply say that I commend every volunteer that came into prison. I don't think y'all really realize the significance of what it means when y'all go into prisons. And any capacity, whether through letters or whether coming there by person, it saved my life. It literally did. Faithfully coming in every week. Faithfully. Through rain, through snow, through blizzards. To come in and minister to us. It literally takes us out of ourselves and our own lockdown thinking. To get out of ourselves and walk down that corridor and come to a Christian service or a college course, and takes us from that environment of sitting there all alone in a cell with yourself to come and partake of something like that is phenomenal. It really is. And I want to commend y'all on that. The second thing I have to mention is books and bars. I ordered so many books from y'all. Y'all must have knew my name. I think it was every 90 days. It used to be every time you order one, but then it was every 90 days, every 6 months, every 30 days. But I ordered so many books from y'all. And when I first went to incarceration, I was illiterate. I didn't know how to read and write. I had 6th grade education. But I learned how to read and write to free myself. And I, like people, screenplays, I'm a poet. And I love writing. It frees you. It frees your mind, occupies your mind. So thank y'all for always coming in. Thank you for books to bars. Thank you for being supportive. Thank y'all so much from the bottom of my heart. It literally saved my life. It literally did. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you guys run that? So my name's Rich Jacobs. I worked in Phoenix now for the past 20 years. Started out as a correctional officer 20 years ago, and the last 15 years as a vocational school teacher to the men. And I had the privilege to know these men. In fact, with my friend Dan Greer here from my church, and Pastor Paul, 17 years ago, started with James Atkins. And I say all that just to say that what we're talking about here is stories of hope and transformation. And Freddie Knoll, being the chairman of Youth Fellowship Prison Ministry for the Delaware Valley, and me as a supporter and volunteer of Youth Fellowship Prison Ministry, we've documented 11 stories of hope and transformation. Freddie's is one of them, and they're releasing a book in July for just to get these stories into the hearts, into the hands and the minds of those who are currently incarcerated, so that they too can look at these stories and read these stories of what we're listening to today and say, like Termaine had mentioned, or alluded to, like, if so-and-so can do it, I can do it. And so I just, my hat's off to everybody in this room that's taken the time to do this, and I appreciate everybody's efforts.
I have a hand from my friend here. Stand up.
I'd just like to say, when I was in prison in 1981, I was a functional illiterate. And this young man here, Pastor Paul and Dan Greer, started me on a Bible study that's called Global Ministry. And I have to say, I give honor and praises to this young man, because today, well, the 21st of May, I graduate not only with associates, but with a bachelor's. And only because the grace of God placed in the hearts of men. And even when I have to say, even through the bars of adversity, Mr. Jacobs and I sat here and began to operate a business, dealing with recycling. And I tell you, God has been so good, because I'm talking about how God has transformed us. Men of low esteem, places up in higher esteem, for the mark of the calling of reaching for the degree of our Lord.
So I saw another hand, so we're going to do, I think we'll do one more comment. We're going to have one more question. If there's two good questions, we can do two. And then see if there are any closing thoughts, and then we're going to close, because I do want to keep it to about 2 hours. That's around the time I find people's attention just falls off a cliff. So would you like to go ahead?
This is a closing. Through Ginny, most of us are reachable. When you're trying to start your prison ministry, if you need any help, I'm available. I'm sure I feel others are you. So.
Thank you very much. We might be checking in with you in the foreseeable future. Go ahead in the back.
Perhaps it's right for my daughter Alicia to let you know that, Dennis was my husband, Dennis Warner was my husband, and Ginny took up the invitation to work with the men for education to ministry. It was Dennis's wish. He had 1 year from the time of his diagnosis to the time of his death. He had 1 year to think about what would go on after his death. And one thing that he wanted to go on was to offer the opportunity for education to the children of men who were incarcerated at Phoenix. Graterford at the time. And so any funds that came to the family at the time of Innocent's death were designated to 3 different institutions, and one of them was towards the education of the children of these men who were incarcerated. And we continue that work, and we are very pleased that Ginny and Maine are directors with my daughter and a few other people in this opportunity. We work very hard to make it be known that we would like to give opportunities for education to the family members of men who have been incarcerated.
So if we have one more question, we'll do one more question. All right. So I'm going to let the 4 of you decide how you'd like to close. Maybe one of you has a message you want to share before we end. Maybe you each want to say something brief. It's entirely up to you. You've got about 10, 12 minutes, so it's up to you.
Well, I just want to say it was an honor and privilege to come. Thank you, Chris and Bob, Pastor Doug. Met you guys approximately 2 months ago now, so pretty awesome. Thank you, Jenny, for introducing me to your nice friends. Tom, thank you for being here, Chris. I do want to say, so I've ordered I was trying to remember what I've requested through bars, and it was actually a Bible, and it wasn't no particular Bible, and as Tom alluded to, you know, guys that are incarcerated, they ask for specific books, titles, and the Bible that I wanted was the authorized King James Version, 1619. This is what I wanted. I didn't want no new King James Version. I didn't want no Gideon Version. I wanted the AV. Because in my studies and my readings, it led me to believe that this version was the most authentic version in the English writing. And y'all sent that to me, man.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And watch this. I still have that Bible. It's wrapped up with some rubber bands. I don't open it as often because it's worn down, but I received that Bible in like 2005, man. That's pretty cool. So thank you, but thank you all for having me. This was fun. This was an honor. I'll come back anytime, as long as I'm available.
I'm with Termaine. I'd like to thank you for inviting us. Prison ministry has become my passion over the years. Sometimes I feel I get far more than I give in it, but I guess that's how God blesses us when we do things that we're called to do. Don't hesitate. Please don't hesitate about starting a prison ministry. Don't get discouraged, but just really pray about it constantly. Wrap it so tightly in prayer, because that's what's going to make it work, and it's so worthwhile.
Also just to echo off of them, definitely thanks for having us. We were glad to be able to come and do it, and to be here with you. And hopefully that we've said something that gave you some ideas. Hopefully we didn't scare you off, but we gave you, just what you needed to be able to take the vision and run with it, because that's what it really comes down to. So we hope that this isn't the first time we're all together. This is the last time that we're all together. That we can, and if there's any way that healing communities can assist in helping getting this started, Pastor, we gladly. It doesn't cost you a dime. We're fully funded, so we'll come in and help with anything that you want. And we also have examples from probably 35 other churches that have done the same thing and are willing to share within the network, their experience as well. So that's just what we're at. We just want to see more and more communities of faith grab this work. because we know how much it made a difference in our lives. I know if it had not been for my faith community when I first came home from prison, if it hadn't been for how they supported my wife and my kids while I was in prison, and it hadn't been for, and somebody, brought up Dr. Good back there, and that's my board chair. So I understand it. He the one that hired me. So I tell him all the time, you sure you knew what you were getting into when we went on this journey together, and that's definitely have been a big part of this. So it is an incredible work. There is definitely much more. While it will take a little bit of frustration of getting it started, but once it gets going, it takes on a life of its own. And I definitely will tell you, any of us that do this work will tell you we've been blessed 1,000 times over what we gave. That it is a passion. And anytime, God's really good at taking, for all the formerly incarcerated folks in here, God's really good at taking our worst experiences and making them our life's mission. And making it the work that because nobody knows it better than we do. A friend of mine, Glenn Martin, said not too long ago that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and usually the furthest away from the resources. So nobody knows this better than us. It's just convincing other people to say, you know what, you need to invest in us because we know what we're talking about.
At the beginning, I said it's real hard for Books to Bars to see some of our successes. Gentlemen, I'm going to add you two to my lectures the next time as one of our successes. This is what I'm talking about that Books to Bars is mainly for. Education. To take somebody that went in with very little and come out and can do good, has learned and has moved on from who he was and what he was in the past. Congratulations to both, to all you guys that came in. One parting note as far as prison ministry goes, a lot of times you're going to have to get your good feelings from yourselves. Because you are going to, I think I said, you are going to meet some disappointments. You are going to cry sometimes. You are going to have to reach down and realize, and this is what we do at Books to Bars all the time, although when we hear about sending a specific book that somebody ordered, we get up there and, hey, and jump for joy, because that doesn't happen too often, and I'm glad it did. But, it doesn't happen often, and you got to pull within yourself to realize you're going to be doing something really, really great. Thank you.
Look at that, landed the plane right around 4 o'clock. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to those who joined us on YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel, FPC-Phoenixville, you'll be able to find video of this in a few hours once they process it and upload it. It'll be there for as long as there's YouTube, I guess. So hopefully a long time, we'll see. But thank you not only to our distinguished guests who brought so much knowledge and wisdom, thank you to those who came and also shared your knowledge and your wisdom. There was so much in this room to process, I'll probably have to watch it again after. To those of you who are interested in possibly working with us, feel free to come introduce yourself to me, introduce yourself to Chris and Bob Whitrock. I'm throwing them out there. I'll be over here talking to them. And because we're committed to this process, but we're just getting started. And so right now I think we've just been given 20 fantastic ideas. We'll probably have to pick one to get started with. So that's our next challenge. And that'll depend partly on who wants to partner with us and what you're passionate about. But I've said thank you a lot. I'm going to say it again. Thank you all for joining me, for joining us here. And I hope the rest of your day is wonderful.